today's presentation. It's on the parameter manager in ARUtils. So let's just have a quick look at what the parameter manager can do for you. So the typical functionality of the parameter manager is to show parameter usage. It's very easy in a project to not have a good idea of how parameters have been used. So the parameter manager will show you how parameters have been assigned to the project, so perhaps to a doors category or a walls category, what global parameters there are, and also where shared parameters have been used in families. So it gives you a good overview of how parameters have been used. It'll also show hidden parameters, so the things that you can't normally see through the user interface. It'll also list the GUIDs, those unique identifiers for shared parameters. This can sometimes be useful if the same GUID has been used for different named parameters, or more commonly where two parameters have the same name but are in fact different GUIDs, perhaps parameters coming from different locations. So it'll also let you quickly export all the shared parameters out to a file. So if you receive a project from another consultant, you can export out all of those shared parameters to a file that you can then use for embedding those shared parameters. And in a simpler vein, it'll export parameters to Excel. So that's showing you how parameters have been used, but obviously we want to also manipulate those parameters to rationalize how they've been used. And so with Parameter Manager, you can easily delete parameters from your project. You can delete parameters from your families. You can also take a parameter which has been associated to a category in your project and actually embed those parameters into families. And it will take those values that have been set in the project and embed them into the family types. So it'll also let you copy shared parameters between families. So if you find that there's a parameter in one door family that you would like in all your other families, in all your other door families, you can easily copy those shared parameters between the families. When you're doing any of these embedding operations, you do have the opportunity to assign a value to those newly embedded parameters. Now, this is not full parameter value management. It simply allows you to say, all right, let's start off with a value of Fred for the person that modeled all of these items. You'll still need to go through and use other utilities to change all of those values to the correct ones for each family type. And you also have the option of changing family parameters to be type or instance. Note, it's only for family parameters. You don't have that option with parameters within your project. Now, a recent update to the Shared Parameter Manager is the ability to access the shared parameter elements within a project. This has occurred since Revit 2016, but it's fairly new to the Parameter Manager. What you can now do via the API is actually store where shared parameters are stored within your project. Now, if you've ever tried to delete a shared parameter from a project and then redefine it in your shared parameters definition file and then add it back in, you'll always find that the parameter comes back in, but effectively it comes back in using the old definition. That's because the parameters were actually stored in this special table and never actually deleted from your project. So with families and tag families, those shared parameter elements are actually removed as soon as you stop using them within your family or tag family. With projects, however, they're basically retained and stored in the project, and you can only delete them via the API. Now, two other options which are new to the parameter manager are an ability to copy project parameters. So you can select a project parameter and say copy it to a shared parameter, and all of the values will be replicated between those two parameters. This enables you to turn what is just a project parameter into a shared parameter. All the associated categories are dragged across with the new definition, and all the values are copied across. So an easy way to go from a project parameter to a shared parameter. Now, you may be aware of the option within head of the family to replace shared parameters with a new definition. So with Parameter Manager, there's a new option to replace a shared parameter of the same name. So say you've got two parameters named model number, but using different GUIDs. With the updates to the Parameter Manager, you'll now be able to merge the new definition or the new GUID into families so that all families are using the one definition. I'll show you a bit more about that in the following examples. Just a final quick note. Remember that the Parameter Manager is really not to be used for managing parameter values. If you want to change parameter values, typically you'll use import, export anything, and that is a much better and more productive way to update parameter values. One other last point to make is that deleting parameters using the Parameter Manager means that you really need to understand how parameters are being used and what the implications are of deleting a shared parameter. So let's go and now have a look at the Parameter Manager interface. Okay, we're in the basic sample project now. Now, one of the things that the Parameter Manager is ideal for is actually determining what shared parameters are in your project and how they've been used. Have they been used consistently? So we'll just go to Parameter Manager, and that brings up our dialog. So we're pointing to a shared parameter file. We can specify some items that we want scanned. So in this case we've got project parameters ticked, family shared parameters, and we're not going to ignore 2D families. So our main button here is scan, so we'll just hit the scan project. So that will now go through. It interrogates all of our families, it interrogates our project, and it determines what parameters we've actually got within the project. So we've now got a list of our parameters. So there's a few things that immediately jump out at us. You can see here we've got a number of highlighted items, anodized aluminium, a couple of entries for that. But you'll notice here that the GUIDs are actually different in their usage. So at some point another anodized aluminium definition has been created and brought into this project. Now it might have been brought in through loading of a family, or it might have been brought in through adding it as a project parameter. We can't really be certain, but in any case there's two versions of that parameter. Okay, so apart from those differences being highlighted, let's have a quick look at the table and the important bits of information. So we've got the found in column, and the found in column says where the parameter was found. So in this case there was a family instance. with family instance multiple def, it means this particular parameter, height, occurs in a number of families. And we can actually see that because it's highlighted, there's also some issue about the usage of that parameter. There'll be a couple of GUIDs that are different but using the same name. So we've got family types as another category. Family type multi-definitions. So it occurs in a family type, and there are multiple families that use that particular definition. And you can see also that we've got an is type. So is it a type? Is it an instance? Is it visible? So another option within the parameter manager is that we can see hidden parameters. We've then got the types of parameter that it is: material, length, yes, no, URL. Also, whether that parameter can vary across groups. That's an option you get when you are creating parameters. We've also got the family and the category of family where that parameter occurs, and also a value that's been used in one of the types. So 6,000 in this case. Now back to our found in. So we've got some project parameters, and you can see we've got a project parameter occupant. It's not a shared parameter. But we've got another one, recycled content, and that one is a shared parameter. So we're very quickly getting the idea of what's in our project, and with all of the red highlighted bits, we can see we've got quite a few issues. Now, a new category is shared parameter element, and whenever you add a shared parameter to a project, there's a special table where shared parameters are stored and are never deleted unless you use something like the shared parameter manager or some other API that accesses that list of items. Now, you can see we've got quite a few shared parameter elements, and pretty much anything that shows up here as a shared parameter element doesn't have a matching entry in family types or project. So all of these shared parameter elements are actually dead and unused and just clogging up your file. So we'll be able to delete those shortly. Now, the last thing that we've got, hopefully, another item type that we can have is a tag shared parameter element. So if we've got tags within the project that use shared parameters, then that will appear here as a tag shared parameter element. Okay, so for me the first step to clean up this project now and start rationalizing it would be to just show shared parameter elements. So we're just filtering on that, and we'll now just pick all of those. Remember, this is not a complete list of shared parameter elements, just the ones that haven't been used in a family or tag family. So we've got all of those selected now, and we can just go to delete, or we can right click delete parameter, and this will now prompt you and say, are you absolutely certain you want to delete the shared parameter element would? Only delete the item if you are certain the parameter is not in use by any families or tag families. Because I've done that complete scan, I'm confident that there aren't any families using them. And I'll just say, look, that's my default answer, so it won't prompt me with every one of these deletions. So I'll just say yes, and it will now go through and delete all of those parameters from my project. So these were just parameters stored in the shared parameter element table within the project, and we now get a result showing that those parameters were deleted. And we'll just clear that filter to show us the rest of the parameters. Okay, so let's just sort by parameter names and see what issues we have. Alright, so we've got this ADA compliant, which appears with two different GUIDs. Okay, so what we might do is say, alright, I want to merge that ADA compliant family, and we'll just see that it relates to plumbing fixtures, and we've got a lavatory 2.2 luminced family, once again also with plumbing fixtures. So we can actually just say merge to selected families. So this will be merging that parameter into that other family, the Toto. And so we've got our lavatory Toto, or Tutu, and we'll just say select. And so it's now going to find that that family already had an AD compliant parameter, and you can see here it says replaced ADA compliant with ADA compliant, and it gives us the two GUIDs related to that updated replacement. So we'll just go, okay, thank you. Alright, you can see now we've still got our ADA compliant showing. That's because we now have released that shared parameter element, made it visible because it now no longer appears in any of our families. So I can just go to that, hit delete parameter, and just say yes. It's deleted that ADA compliant, and now we've got a consistent usage of that ADA compliant parameter. Okay, so let's just have a look at the issue with this finish parameter. You can see we've got two that are used in plumbing fixtures families, but we've got two that aren't being used in a matching way. Once again, this 2.2, both a bathtub and a lavatory. So I can just say, for example, alright, I actually want all of my plumbing fixtures families to have that finish parameter. So I can pick one of these, and what I'll be doing is merging or embedding that into all families of the plumbing fixtures category. So I can just say I want it to be of category all families, and I don't actually need to fix up the type instance, nor do I need to update the values to a new value. I'll just say of category all families. So finish will now get embedded into all of the plumbing families. Okay, and it tells me it's replaced a shared parameter and it's added shared parameters to other families. So we'll just go OK, and you'll see now that we've got a number of families all with that 05 shared parameter, but we've once again got that shared parameter element. So once again we can say delete parameter and just go yes, and our finish now shows us all good and dandy. So we could go on doing this. We've got the option, if we want to merge parameters into a number of families of any category, we could pick that and go of any category select families, and it would then bring up a list of families that enables us to embed that into it. Okay, so another related issue might be where a parameter is used alternatively as a type and instance parameter. So here we've got height, which is basically an instance parameter, or in being used as an instance parameter. We've also got height being used as a type parameter. So what we could do if we wanted to change the definition of this particular one to be of a type, we could pick that one and we could say update type instances. So it now shows that these values are going to overwrite any particular ones. And we've got SH lighting pendant. In this case, it's actually lighting fixtures and plumbing fixtures. So it's not necessarily the best example of why we might want to do this, but it is using the same GUID for that particular thing. So I can pick this parameter, say merge to all families, and merge to any category. So we do that, and we then get this list, and I'm pretty sure it was SH lighting pendant was the one that we wanted to update. Do have to remember a bit here, but we'll select that, and that should now merge that parameter into that family and change it from a type to a instance parameter. Alright, and you'll see here that it says change parameter to type, processing family, parameter height, value has not been affected. However, changing from instance to type obviously has some implications within your project. So if we now go out of this and we look at height, we'll see now that our SH lighting pendant shows as being, it's now a type parameter. We would have to go in and probably determine how we set those values in the various types. So a nice easy thing that you can do from the interface is actually right click and go open family. So you don't have to do some horrible thing of finding where the family is or remembering what it is. You just get taken straight to it. You can check the parameters. So we had height, I think it was, and you'll see that height is now a type parameter, and if we had a number of types we could vary that value between the types. So once we've done that, we can load it back into the project. Now, one thing to point out is that if we change parameters in here, their definition, what have you, and load it back into the project, we are going to need to do a new scan to ensure that we have the most up-to-date information. Okay, so you've seen how we can embed parameters into families, how we can change the type, we can find non-visible parameters. In this case, we've got temp lpar ARUtils. Other than that, they're all pretty much visible. What we can also do, if we find that we don't have a particular parameter in our shared parameters file, we can pick one or multiple parameters. So if we wanted to export out those parameters to our shared parameters file, we select them and hit shared export. Lets us pick the file, so our file was temppars.txt. We've got a few groups within that file, so we'll say we want those to actually be associated to the Fred group. And you can see now that it's added those solar cell material, silver button, shipping weight items to that parameter shared definitions file. So we'll just save that, quit out of it, and we've also got the option of exporting that out to Excel. Similar sort of process. It just gives us a table that may be useful in working out more information about those particular the usage of our shared parameters. So let's just look at a fun scenario. Say, for example, we wanted to actually stamp our families as belonging to us. So we might go through the process of saying manage, project parameters. We will add a new parameter, and we'll just say family owner, and we'll say that it's a text parameter, and it's also a type parameter. So, and we'll associate that to doors because we're a big doors manufacturer, and perhaps windows as well. So we've now got that parameter set up, and if we go to level 1 and pick a door, we'll see that if we go to edit type, we've got family owner showing. Now, ideally we want all of those set to be the same value. So we can actually do that in this case fairly easily using this process. Okay, so we'll just fire up the parameter manager again, and we'll just say do a scan, but just scan project parameters. So it'll be a bit faster. Alright, one thing to note now is that we've got shared parameter elements appearing. Because we didn't scan our families, it hasn't been able to resolve those as having been used by anything in our project. So it comes up showing that it's a shared parameter element, and we shouldn't actually delete them unless we do a full scan. So down here we've got our family owner. So if we click on that, we do actually have the option of updating values as we create or copy those parameters. So I'll just go here and say ARSS, so AR Software Solutions. So what I want to do now, and you just want to make sure that you finish editing that particular thing, is we can right click that and say copy to parameter. Because we made family owner not actually a shared parameter, we want to now have a new parameter name, and we'll just leave it as family owner copy, or we could make it family owner shared parameter. Alright, it now has to create that in our shared parameter definition file. So we'll just say put it into the Fred group. Alright, copying family owner to family owner copy. The two parameters differ slightly. That's because one is shared and one is a project parameter. Copying a value should still be possible. Alright, so we've copied family owner to family owner copy. It was created in the shared parse file, and it was also created in the project. And if we now exit out of this, we should be able to pick a door family. I'll just select that, say edit type. You'll see now that we have family owner copy ARSS, and so that value has been put into all of our families of doors and windows, and we can now actually simply delete that family owner parameter. We can just go to manage project parameters, and we can say remove that one. And so now once again, if we go back to our type family, you'll see that we've got family owner copy ARSS. Obviously the naming could have been a bit better, but it's made it nice and simple for us to have that updated value embedded into our families. Now, before we finish up on this session, I mentioned before that we can have tag shared parameter elements. So this is a shared parameter element that's been used in a tag family, and if we were to open that family, we'd see that there's a tag in it with a label that uses that shared parameter element. Now, one thing you can be certain of with any shared parameter elements that occur in tags is that they are in use. We can't at the moment modify labels through the API, as in the only way that you can change a label in a tag is by going in there, adding the parameter, and then assigning it to the label. But as you can see, it shows us that a particular shared parameter is in use in that family. Now, one thing which I didn't mention was that despite the shared parameter manager being typically for projects, you can actually open families and get it to run on just those families. So if we say open this family, we are then able to rerun the parameter manager. And any time you change families, the list of parameters will be cleared, and we then have to do that scan. So we'll just hit scan project even though we're in a family. And here it shows us that this family is using porcelain and it's using silver button. So once again, you can do things such as delete those particular items, probably copy them, but it works now in families as well as in projects. So that concludes the presentation on Shared Parameter Manager. As you can see, it's fairly powerful, and it will ensure that all of your families or all of somebody else's families can be quickly brought up to scratch, in that the GUIDs will be consistent throughout families and throughout your project. That in itself can save you a great deal of time and frustration as you try to work out why a particular value is not appearing in a tag. Thank you very much.